Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of Riddles Around the World. I'm your host. My name is Johnny. Nice to meet you. Welcome in. We are joined by a special guest, my brother, the man of God himself. Shane, how you doing? Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I'm doing pretty good. We're about to be a little bit better after this discussion on the multiverse because everybody knows how much fun this super easy subject is.
Bro, what? I've been doing research for like 2 weeks and I still barely understand the definition.
Hey, man, this is we picked a good one to start off with. We went straight from time travel and future predictions to this. So I don't know what we were thinking,
Hey, listen,
but
it sounded good at the time.
yeah, I guess that just tells you how not smart both of us are. Because we started off with, what was it? We talked about some predictions in TV, like
Yeah,
in media, of how
TV
they
and
predicted the future
TVs and
and how that
movies.
could or could not have happened, and some of the more interesting ones. We actually left out some of the future predictions I guess we could have done and might do in the future, like Nostradamus,
hmm
who's kind of the famous one for predicting the future.
I was actually going
Uh,
to touch on that. I had a lot of positive feedback on the episode, and I appreciate everybody that stopped by and messaged me or commented. Uh, there's a large portion of stuff we did not cover in that. We might touch back and make an episode two. We'll discuss that more in the future, but the ones we discussed barely scratched the surface. So we'll probably touch on that in a part two later on. Might be sooner than you think. Might be later. We'll discuss that at a later date.
when our brains are working.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we talked about that, and we talked about time travel. Just again, scratching the surface because that's such a big subject. We
hmm
just thought it'd be fun to talk about. So we talked about time travel, but in the middle of all that, we did mention that next we were going to talk about the multiverse, which is just this huge, phenomenal subject, and there's so much to that. So we figure we're going to keep scratching the surface a little bit, and if we generate some interest, maybe we can go into a little more detail. But starting that off, the first thing is just to clarify what the multiverse is,
All right.
what it actually means to say multiverse.
Before we do that, Neil deGrasse, please don't come at me because we are not professionals. Okay. I mean,
Oh,
if you want to message
hey,
me on
hey,
Twitter or something, bro, I appreciate that. But I am not a
hey,
professional, my good sir.
I would love it if Neil deGrasse came after us. Man, that's all the publicity we could want right there. Uh,
I mean, yeah.
what was this? Oh, so, but if he wants to, this is probably what he'd do it for. Okay, because I'm gonna give us the short version of what the multiverse is. Okay, the multiverse is just the idea that there are either not just multiple, but somewhere between two and an infinite number of other universes that exist at the same time as this one.
hmm
They might be similar, or they might be complete opposites. Some of them may die off, some of them may be starting later, whatever. But just an unlimited number of other universes, and the idea is whether or not we can prove that and whether or not they relate to the universe that we're in.
Also,
So
to
that's the
touch on
topic we're
that, that
starting off with.
is not the exact same as a parallel universe.
No, it is not.
Those are two different
Right.
things. There is some confusion among certain people out there that those are similar and the same. They're not. By definition, they are complete opposites, basically. But to touch on that, like you said, with the multiverse having the multiple universes out there, the multiverse theory actually started in 1895, long, long ass time ago. So I do believe the article that I read, they thought it was more of philosophy, correct? That
It was, yes.
it was more about philosophy rather than a theory about multiple universes, or
Which
I don't
which
know how.
really just comes down to it was I guess it's based on the science they had. Because if you think about it, everything was considered philosophy until it became a science.
Yeah.
Like psychology was part of philosophy until they actually started mapping out how the brain works.
hmm
Like really, philosophy is just a precursor to science. So
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it, they would say it was philosophy just because they reasoned it out from what they had at the time.
Yeah. Like I said, this came out before we had any kind of technology to talk to other people rather than having like messenger pigeons and shit. So having this idea and thought process that early of an out on in our human existence is it's pretty crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, it's I didn't think about it being over a century old. Now it's relatively new for science, but yeah, it's older than I guess I would have thought. And interesting thing about multiverse versus parallel universe is a parallel universe. could be considered a type of multiverse, or maybe the names of the other universes, or could be something completely different. That's not something that's really been definitively nailed down by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So as we talk about this, just to clarify, we'll be talking about multiverse in general, not any specific kind, and not parallel universe, because that would be something very specific and much harder to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess if we start with that and starting with understanding what it is, the next question is what are some examples of it we could use to explain that? So I guess I'll start with Johnny. If you have any examples of a multiverse that you
Uh,
could
the
refer to.
the best example I could use is actually something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. Comic books. Comic books use a variation of different characters using the multiverse. So like
Right.
a lot of people are huge Marvel fans now. I believe I want to say it's Earth 171 is the multiverse that we live in. I'm probably wrong on that. I I'm spacing for some reason.
So that one's out of my out of my range. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I do know that there are Marvel and DC actually use them both because that can account for different variations of a character. So like in certain universes, Superman has a different costume. He could have a black suit like you saw in the new Justice League movie, or he could have a complete white suit. It could just those are subtle little changes that could be happening in the multiverse. Also, like their name, his name might not be Superman, and he might not be Kal El. He might be Zod in one universe, but it's the
Right.
same character. It's just a way that's a dumbed down way of using the multiverse because I think that's the simplest and most easy way to connect with somebody trying to understand the multiverse would be use something that they're familiar with, comic books, Marvel, DC characters, stuff like that. That's probably the best
Uh,
one I can give you.
right. One of my favorite examples of that is someone that was discussing it. The way they said it is multiverses. One of them could be so similar that the only difference is that Superman has a mustache. Like that could be it, and everything else is exactly the
Or
same.
he could be a complete different species of alien. He could be like Martian Manhunter.
Right. Another interesting thing about it is there could be some that are exactly like ours. If there's an infinite number of them, there could be some that are exactly like ours that will end up different at some point, but just haven't reached that point yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're identical. There could be another you out there doing the exact same thing you're doing right now, exact same time, wearing the same shirt. Everything's exactly the same because it hasn't verged away from us. Like it hasn't veered off from our course yet.
So that could bring up the butterfly effect, technically.
I hadn't thought of that.
Because if we're doing the exact same thing, maybe we just made the exact decisions up to this point. Maybe we make a different decision tomorrow, and that's how it branches off.
And get the what is it, temporal ripples or whatever you call them,
Mm-hmm.
where
Butterfly flaps its wings in Florida and causes an earthquake in California.
I don't know about that one. That can be another. That could be a topic for another day. That's. For those who don't know, which is pretty much anybody listening to this. I'm a debunker usually,
Mm-hmm.
so the ones like that, I'd really want to just sit there and break that down. But we can go back to our popular media examples, and he said Marvel in the reference there. The next, I think it's the next Doctor Strange movie, is it? That's going to be
Multiverse
all
of
about the
Madness.
multiverse. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's what it's going to be all about is the multiverse. So I can't wait to see how that comes out and how they relate it to each other. But I guess if we're going to say that this is what it is, that we have examples of it that people can relate to, why does it matter? So what's the point of even talking about the multiverse? And of course, the first thing is just that it's interesting. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're just thinking about stuff that's just fun to think about, multiverse is pretty near the top of the list.
Simply because the possibilities are literally endless.
I mean, I just wonder, is there a universe where there's somebody who has my name, looks like me, acts exactly like me, but everything else in their world is different? What would that look like? So
That is
it's
a
it-
good
it's fun
question.
to like consider possibilities there. But another one that I like about the multiverse is how it relates to so many other theories that are interesting. Uh, like Johnny, you mentioned one right before we started that you thought would be interesting. What was that?
Uh, Deja vu,
Yeah, yeah,
saying that if you've ever had the dreams and stuff where you have a dream and then like a month or two later you're like, this has happened before. What if it actually has happened before? It's from a different universe where maybe their time is sped up and that's already happened to them.
Right.
Because you can't explain deja vu when, say, you have a dream tonight, you just went off it, and then in 6 months that exact thing happens. You remember it happened. You remember it vividly, and like you've been here before. It's you stood in this exact same place. You looked at the same thing that's happening, going down in the same fashion. There's no way to prove how the hell you noticed that 6 months ago. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So what if it's you kind of tapping into in your subconscious thoughts while you're asleep? What if you're tapping into other versions and or realities of yourself that have been there and done that? Because like you said, you and another multiverse or another universe could be stepping in the same step every day, and our lives haven't unsynced yet into a different branch. What if, like I said, they're just ahead on the time scale?
Right. Because one of the interesting things about the idea of a multiverse is that if there's an infinite number of them, it's very much unlikely that they would all have the same laws of physics,
Mm-hmm.
move at the same rate of time, have started at the same time. There's so many things that can be different, even if it's just a microscopic difference, like they're 2 days ahead of us, two
Mm-hmm.
months ahead of us, a year ahead of us, whatever. If that's the case, and you think about, well, our brains work differently when we're asleep. What if two of those universes line up while you're
While you're
asleep
asleep.
and while they're asleep, and you link just for a minute? So what you're seeing is something that was in their past, what happens in your future, because the only difference might be between the two universes where they're at in time.
Mm-hmm.
So all you're doing when you fall asleep and they happen to be asleep at the same time, having a very strong dream, is that you link up for that moment because you're the same person. That would be
I
insane.
think I'm onto something here.
Yeah, I mean, you might be. I don't know. Yeah, good luck proving it anytime soon, but you might be. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm gonna get the Nobel Prize. Don't worry about it. I got it.
Hey, just remember me when you start making some money.
I got
So,
you.
but another interesting thing with that about the deja vu is what if something happens to you and you remember it even though it hasn't happened to you? Has that ever happened to you? I said that weird. Have you ever
Oh,
had a time where you got deja vu knowing it was something you couldn't have experienced before? For
could
example,
I
I
was gonna
was
say, could
in,
you elaborate on that a little bit more?
yeah, yeah, I was in Germany with the National Guard. And I remember going into a restaurant that certainly I'd never been to before because it's the first time I'd been to that town ever. First time I'd been in Germany, let alone in that part of Germany. That restaurant like nowhere I've ever been, but for some reason, between the door and sitting at the table, I got the strongest feeling that I'd been there before.
Oh yeah,
And
I've definitely had
I
that.
don't remember dreaming it. I know I'd never actually been there. I just had that deja vu out of nowhere.
I had that when I moved to Texas. My I moved to Texas and I worked in the oil field for a few years. I think it was about 3 years. The first thing I remember was when it was the day after orientation. They gave us pagers. That's how they would contact us, letting us know that our
Right.
job was ready for us to go to work. And I remember clear as day, like I don't know how long in advance I had the dream, but I remember the dream vividly of hearing the pager about right here beside my head going off on a counter that I'd never seen before. And I didn't even think about the fact that I'd lived in Texas for 2 or 3 days before the pager had went off and that set in. So like as soon as it went off, it was like an instant thought, like I've been here before. This has happened. I know what's going on. I don't know. It's not as predominant as you going to
So
Germany.
what if you hadn't dreamed that before?
I mean, it's a good possibility. I mean, you forget. I
Because
think the
that's what I'm
science.
saying.
I
Is
think the
as
science
I'm saying
behind it
that.
is you forget like 90% of the dreams that you actually have. So I
Well,
mean,
what I'm
it's fully
but how
possible.
could I have dreamed every detail of the what I'm saying is I wonder if the connection can work both ways. If there's a universe that's so similar or even exactly the same as the one we're in now, except maybe we're a couple days ahead of them.
That's
And
possible.
so the deja vu feeling I got was a link to what they were about to have happen or what they were doing at the same time, even though I wasn't asleep.
I mean, that is an interesting thought and way to look at it because I mean, we could be ahead of them, like we discussed on another universe.
Hey,
So I
so
mean,
deja vu could just be you connecting to someone in a parallel or multiverse or whatever, or I don't know, maybe it's just a glitch in the matrix. I don't know, but
that'll be a
I
talk
guess
for another time.
yeah, yeah.
That is a big topic, and we're not ready for that one just yet. We'll get to that later on.
Yeah, that'll just be a sneak preview.
Yeah,
So,
just it's coming. Don't worry about it. We're gonna talk about glitches in the matrix.
but that's what I wonder about the deja vu thing. Is if it's a connection, I wonder which way it's going. Can it happen if time is out of sync? Because here's the other thing: if there's an infinite number of universes,
Mm-hmm.
not only would time be different in some of them, if not all of them, so would the laws of physics. So would the laws of quantum mechanics. Like everything would be different. It could be that there's in all those universes, there's just one. But in that one, everybody there can see the future.
That would
And
be
so every
interesting.
time we have deja vu or memories that aren't ours or stuff like that Mandela effect, things like that happen that we can't explain could all be coming from just one universe where they can see infinite possibilities and our minds connect for some reason. Because there it's a possibility, even though here it's not.
Well, there is a lot of studies shown about the brains that there's a lot of parts of the brain that they don't fully understand how they function and work. So I mean, they could be in a different universe where they tap into that area of the brains that we don't know how to access to be able to maybe send a warning. Maybe that's what deja vu is. They're sending a warning, like, "Hey, so you know something's coming," or maybe something good's coming. Who knows? I've never had a bad experience in a deja vu situation, but I also never had a more better experience because I've
Yeah.
understood that I was in a deja vu situation. So I mean, it could be them trying to warn us and talk to us or communicate to another universe. That might be one of their ways of
Oh man.
communications.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. maybe they're trying to send us messages. Hey, don't go on a date with that girl. She's crazy. All right, slow your roll, bro. Uh, and I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole because then you get into the question of what if that's every time you daydream, or
Well, see, I
what
read
if you get on
that
Google and search for a certain job because you in another universe just got that job. Like that,
that's a big
like
thing.
it gets really really detailed there if you take that too far. So I don't want to
Not
take it
only
quite
that,
that far,
you
but
could take into consideration that we potentially live in a simulation, thinking of stuff like that.
oh man, we're leaving that one up. Just or at least
Well,
for today, leaving
yeah,
that one
because
alone.
that's there's a lot to cover in that topic. But I mean, that could be
Yeah.
that could be. All right, hear me out on this. I'm gonna use a video game reference for that.
Okay, okay.
What if the reason we have either deja vu or blips in our memory is because the the game
Somebody just beat the
system
level and they had to start over.
somebody's game system crashed or their internet disconnected and we reset to the last point.
Yeah.
What
Well,
if? I mean, I don't know.
that's what deja vu is. It's where it
Yeah,
buffers and then sets you back a little bit.
yeah.
That's
Just last thing to touch on the simulation. They say that the
I'll say
refrigerator is the save point because you open it up and you forget what's in there and you close it. That's the last thing I'm gonna say about
okay. That's pretty funny. I hadn't heard
that.
that one. That's yeah. We're gonna cut. Religion is enough. Is close enough to a programmer for me for now. Uh, uh, so getting off of deja vu, going to another cool thing about the idea of alternate realities is you have to wonder: do those alternate realities impact ours in any way? So one of the things that I wonder, as far as why I would think maybe multiverse isn't true, is because if they can interact in any way, the changes wouldn't always be subtle. Sometimes they'd be major. Because even if it is something like a universe is so, because the idea is if they collided or merged with us or affected us, it's because of similarities. Like they're so similar they can interact with us. But what if while they're interacting, something bad happens? So, for example, there's another one that everything in that universe is exactly like ours except for a meteor. And so and that meteor is coming down. And so, right as we're colliding, that meteor just pops out of nowhere in our atmosphere and hits us. Why don't things like that happen? Like we have surprise storms and things, but we can
Yeah.
still trace how they came about over a period of time. There's not anything major and negative that just comes out of nowhere. So if they are really impacting us other alternate realities are impacting us in any way, why don't we have evidences like that we could see or observe or measure in some way?
Well, I remember we had spoke earlier about I don't remember what it was. Azura's Claw? Or no, not Azura's Claw. Uh we're potentially that our planet is the center of the universe. We spoke about it a few days ago.
Yes, we talked about it. You talking about the idea of the universe expanding and
Yes,
evidence that it might
I'm
we
sorry.
might be central to it.
Pulled a blank for it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah.
Because
What do you what?
the universe is forever expanding, and one of the ways that you could potentially prove multiverse
O-
theory is the
Occam's
fact,
razor.
there we go. I knew it was something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But the way you could potentially prove is by reaching the end of the ever expanding universe. What's beyond that? A true void. Like we had spoke about that before. But if there is a indefinite growing thing, there's a center. There's a guaranteed center of that thing. Where did the universe start? What started it? What could have caused it? Was it a big bang or was it just happenstance?
Right. So
Uh,
one of the ways that scientists believe we could prove a multiverse is by studying the origin of the universe, and it would look something like this. I think the example we talked about was a balloon. Okay,
mm-hmm,
so they call it inflation, and what it is when the universe first began, if it came from the Big Bang theory, that it would have been this small point, maybe the size of a dot on a piece of paper, and when it exploded out, it would have been expanding at a rate that's so much faster and more significant than it is now. And the example of that is a balloon. When you start blowing up a balloon, at first it expands from nothing to a big one, and then the next few puffs, it's expanding less and less.
mm-hmm,
That's kind of what the universe is doing. It started off at a certain rate very quickly over just a few seconds, and then started to slow down its expansion rate. Maybe still slowing down, maybe to a constant, either way. But during that time that it was inflating, because it was breaking off so fast and spreading so fast, it's possible that some of that matter could have separated off in some way into some other quantum realm, into the true void, into something else,
mm-hmm.
and been the start of other universes. So that's what they're hoping to figure out is they're going to try to measure by trying to find out where the end of the cosmic horizon is, where the end of that expansion is, measure it in some way, and use that and a couple other things like cosmic background microwaves, which is supposed to be leftover radiation from the Big Bang. They're going to try to use some of those things to measure and figure out the rate of expansion, how far back it would have started, and maybe even try to discover through that study if it was possible that something else broke off in that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they're trying to do. And of course, Occam's razor is the idea that the simplest answer is often the best one. So if they're going to say that the Big Bang is how the universe began, the simplest answer to the possibility of multiverses is that it happened.
Yeah,
Because at that incredible expansion rate surrounded by true void, it's incredibly unlikely that nothing would break off
yeah. Because at
just
that
because it
time
was
it wouldn't
expanding
just
so
be a
fast.
it wouldn't just be a slow roll. It would be kind of like an explosion. So in an
It would
explosion you
have,
have shrapnel. So it would
right,
basically be
right,
like shrapnel of the shrapnel from an explosion in this situation would actually be causes of other
right.
universes.
And the other thing is if that's the case, even if that's the case for us, it could be that ours started off as a piece of shrapnel from another one.
Possibility.
Because even discussing the idea of the Big Bang, they wonder, how could that first bit of matter have come about? Well, maybe it was left over from another universe. In fact, I think it might have been Stephen Hawking was one of the first people to say that he doesn't believe this is the first universe. He believes it was either the remnant or a restart from a previous one. I mean, I don't agree with everything he said, as dumb as I am, but he was a smart guy.
He's
So
a
he had to have some
extreme
reason for
super
thinking that.
genius.
Yes. And that's what he thought is that something was left over from a previous one, started this one, or maybe a piece of one in some way started this one. So you get into wondering how could we even start to prove one? That's where they're going to start. They're going to start by measuring the cosmic horizon, which is the end of the current universe, even though it's expanding. Another interesting theory for how they've decided it is constantly expanding is Olber's paradox or the dark night sky paradox. The idea that if the universe wasn't expanding, light would be building up. And so it would literally, the universe itself would just be getting steadily brighter
You get
because
a actual halo around the universe.
I mean, it would just be like looking at a ball of light. Everything you look at would just be light, which would eventually burn up as it built up so far. So the expansion is how they think the light manages to not build up to that point, and also because maybe it's escaping into that true void.
Well, what if the light dissipating in the true void? Because I mean, light spreads and eventually it does end in the true void. What if the light that is breaking off into the true void is actually remnants of our universe creating new ones? What if that's what's happening in the true void? Speculation, just a thought process I had two
So then,
seconds ago.
then you'd get into an interesting discussion of the relationship of energy to matter, because first they'll say that energy can't turn into matter, can't form matter in any way, but then you say, okay, well, you're the one that said in other universes the laws of physics may be different. So which one is it?
Exactly.
So
So,
I don't know. I do know that's pretty interesting. Another cool thing is what's called a redshift, which is you can look at frequencies of light between yourself and another object or our planet and another planet, whatever. And if it's moving away or moving towards you, it's either red or blue.
yeah,
And when you look away from Earth, everything is a similar shade of red, would mean that everything is moving away from Earth at a pretty constant rate. The only way that would work in a spherical anything that's ever expanding in every direction is if you're looking at it from the center,
that's true.
which would make it interesting because we're somehow not the center of the solar system, but we're potentially the center of the universe, right? And not trying to make this religious or anything, but Christian apologetics they really love that one because that fits it fits their story of Earth was made first, then the other stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've fully proven that anyway. So I'm not giving those evidence. Just an interesting point there that even Christians are like, hey, this is good stuff. We got to look into this.
Well, if we was able to prove multiverse in the way that we're saying that you're looking into the ever expanding, and if we are considered the first, would that not prove the Big Bang?
No, no. The only way
No,
it
it
would
wouldn't.
prove the
Okay.
Big Bang, well, the cosmologic background microwaves help. Like I said, that's supposed to be leftover radiation from that explosion. So the idea is measuring those, the rate they dissipate, the strength of the radiation in them, things like that would be a way to measure back to a specific point.
Mm-hmm.
And then if either they can't do that based off of differing measurements, or if they can't match that up with any other evidence of when the universe started, it would actually disprove the Big Bang.
Oh, okay.
The
That was
only, the
just
only
a
way that would support the no, you're right, because again, I'm just throwing it out there as other possibilities. Is if it does match up everywhere they can measure it, and if it does match up with all the other evidences they find, then it would be evidence for the Big Bang.
yeah.
But the way they're looking at it, it would have to fit a very specific set of circumstances to prove the Big Bang as the origin. And there's some other scientific ideas about the origin that it could maybe prove otherwise. But for the Big Bang itself, they'd have to have a pretty specific set of evidences come together.
All right.
I think that's part of the reason even scientists are not necessarily shifting away from the Big Bang, but they're treating it like Hawking did of there was a Big Bang, but it wasn't the start. There was something before that.
Okay. These are the questions that keep me up at night.
Well,
So,
so you tied that to the next part pretty well though, which because the next thing is the question of is there any actual evidence for a multiverse?
mm-hmm.
So we can start you with that one, Johnny, if you want to take that one on since it's so much fun.
I, me personally, I like I said, I've been researching this for the podcast for roughly 2.5, 3 weeks now, roughly. The only evidence I can come up with is circumstantial evidence. Like we could say something along the lines of like the Mandela effect. I apologize, lost my train of thought for a second. That can be the only potential evidence I can give you, in my opinion, is using the Mandela effect because all of us specifically remember something one way, and now if you look at it, it's completely different.
Right.
So,
Which well, that would be, uh, and I should have said it better. For objective evidence is what I guess our first question is, which is there any hard evidence that we can reason out or observe for the multiverse? And there's really not much to that. The best we could come up would be probability.
Yeah.
It's incredibly unlikely. Like I couldn't even give you a number for it to be so unlikely for there to only be one universe, but that universe has a point that not just supports life, but supports life in a way that can last for millennia and is surrounded by systems that support that life. For example,
Uh,
it's not just that the environment on Earth can support life, it's that the sun is the right distance away. It's that Jupiter and Saturn are like vacuums for our universe, where as they orbit around, because they're gas giants and so big, they suck in things like meteors and asteroids and such that might potentially eventually cause us harm, but they're just cleaning it up as they go. Those kind of circumstances mean it's it's just unbelievable that one universe could form that well for one planet and one group of people.
yeah. And speaking on that, like there's hundreds of solar systems out there, and I'm gonna be the first one to say it. I am a skeptic when it comes to a lot of things. I like to give things the benefit of the doubt without knowing all the evidence. I do not think in this entire universe, Earth is the only thing that has life on it. I don't think it's possible. For the millions and millions of galaxies and planets and solar systems that are out there, there is no way in hell our planet, out of every single one of them ever, is the only one that is inhabited by some form of life. It's not. It's not. Sorry. You can debate me if you want to. I don't care. There, there's,
I as
there's
much as
no
I love
way.
debate, I actually won't debate you. What I'll say is, and this is what I hate to do. I hate to give and or if or questions. If the multiverse is real, I wouldn't have a problem with it
Yeah, of course.
because in the same way, statistically, we could be one that it only supports life for us, and other ones support life for them. I
Hmm.
think it's unlikely that if there's one universe, that it could come together in such a way that it supports life in one place but nowhere else.
Hmm.
So that would be my reasoning on that one. But as far as other objective evidences for multiverse, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Anything else, even if they treat it as real, logical, or scientific evidence, it's just not there. It's
Hmm.
subjective in some way. For example, the Mandela Effect. We've already mentioned it a couple times. The idea of the Mandela Effect, for those of you who don't know, is that people think one thing and then it turns out that another is true. And that can be something small or something big. Johnny, I think you remember some of the examples better than I do.
Yeah. One of the big ones was Curious George. A lot of people remember him having a tail. I, he never had a tail. I might just be dumb, but I'm telling you, I don't ever remember Curious George with a tail. Let's see. I got a list of them pulled up right here.
Okay.
The Bears, Berenstain Bears. Here, actually, I'm gonna cover your face up for just a second to show that. Uh, so like, here's another example right here of the Bears of how it's spelled. I think it's how it's spelled. Yeah, yeah, it's how it's spelled. One, I remember it spelled with an E. Now, I was in second or third grade when I remember reading stuff like these books. They were child books. I remember spelling them with an E specifically. That's just one that I remember. Another big one is Febreze. Some people remember it spelled with two E's and it's spelled with one E now. See, some people say that is a Mandela effect. I think that's just a marketing thing. They don't want to spend the money on
An
ink,
extra letter, yeah.
an extra letter with the ink. That's my opinion. I could be completely wrong. There's a couple other ones that are like that. Like let's see. I think it was the Fruit of the Loom. Do you remember the Fruit of the Loom logo that had the little wicker basket at the base
Yeah,
of
it
the
had
fruit?
the cornucopia
Yeah,
behind it.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's not a thing.
yeah.
It doesn't have that no more. Again, a lot of people are like, oh, I remember it like this. I honestly think that's just a marketing tool for them. They don't want to use the extra money on ink because
See that one.
ink
I
is
feel like I remember
expensive.
that. I
I
feel like I
I
remember that.
100% remember that. Another big one was the Monopoly man having a monocle. He doesn't have one anymore. Again, I don't know if this
Okay,
is a
let's
Mandela
see.
effect or not.
I can see that one because I can see how it could have gotten mixed up with a couple other cartoon characters.
Yeah,
So I
wasn't
can
it
kind of see how
the
that might be.
yeah, they could be confusing him with the Peanut Man.
That's still weird though.
Yeah, let's see. I
And see,
can't
those are good examples of the small ones that might
the little
somebody only
trickle.
notices if it's pointed out. Maybe
Yeah, the, like a
like the tiny
like
differences.
a somewhat trickle effect. Like here's
Yeah,
another one. Kit Kat. Apparently, it used to have a hyphen in between Kit and Kat. It doesn't have that no more. Again, to me, it might be a Mandela effect, possibly because it
See,
could be. But
I remember
again,
that too.
I do too. But again, to me, that doesn't prove it's a Mandela effect, in my opinion. That
Yeah.
to me, I think they just don't want to spend the money on the ink. And if that's the case, I understand it.
I
I get
mean,
it.
yeah,
Ink is
it's
fucking
good business.
expensive. If you go to the store and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna get an ink cartridge," you're out like $60. I'm just saying, throwing that out. One of the bigger changes that, in my opinion, is actually a Mandela effect. The Mona Lisa smile. Do you remember that?
I don't know. See, somebody told me they remember the Mona Lisa having a bigger smile.
Yeah,
Is that what it
like
was?
it was
I see.
more.
I
It was
don't
more
remember
of a
that.
predominant in their her lips. It was more predominant right there.
I definitely remember it always being where you couldn't hardly tell there was a smile. Like you really, I
Yeah, it
remember
was one of
that.
those. It was more of a resting bitch face, in my
Yeah. Okay.
opinion.
Yeah. You can say it that way.
uh,
Of course, I guess we should say this. We'll backtrack a little bit here and say that if we're going to keep calling it Mandela effect, explain it for the sake of anybody that doesn't
yeah.
know. Okay. The Mandela effect is called that because one of the best examples is Nelson Mandela himself. Apparently, there was a point where a large part of the world, including myself, thought that he died in prison years ago. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what, 80s, 90s, years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But then a few years ago, he gets released from prison. So he
I
obviously
remember
didn't
hearing
die.
he was executed.
That's what I remember. I remember being taught that he was put in prison and then executed, like soon after he was put in prison,
Yeah.
executed. But then he got released a few years ago. So that's the biggest example and why it's called the Mandela effect, is it's the idea that it can happen even on a larger scale event,
Mm-hmm.
like the arrest of such a like a great man, and then people thinking he's dead when he's not.
All right,
And
so
then
I got two more Mandela
I don't know.
effects that I think are more predominant to say that they are that effect. One is from the famous movie Forrest Gump. It said that the life is like a box of chocolates scene. What they're saying, people are remember. I remember this is one of my favorite movies. Is that he said life is like a box of chocolates. What they're saying he actually said is, if you listen closely, he says life was like a box of chocolates. Now life is. Now that's a big difference right there. Saying was versus is. Because they don't have it, they're not similar in sounding. The only letter they share is the S, but the tense of that word.
I don't know.
That's a
I
big
have
one.
to go back and listen to that one. I don't know that one.
I remember life is like a box of chocolates.
I know everybody says it that way, but I
Well,
don't remember what he actually says. I'll be honest. I don't actually. This I know somebody's gonna hate me for this. I don't actually like that movie.
I hate
So
you. I hate you right now. We're brothers.
it's just
Fuck, fuck you.
it's depressing. Lieutenant Dan's the only character I liked. Like I liked the grumpy old man he played. That's about it. Gary Sinise is
Uh,
awesome. Throw that out there. But yeah, I didn't like
yeah,
that movie so much. So I'd have to go back and watch it to see
yeah,
that. I don't know.
we're gonna have a whole debate on that later out camera.
Okay. uh,
Another one was from actually my bad. I had two other movies. I apologize. Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. The mirror mirror on the wall scene. I know you have a kid. Has she watched this movie? You might know it.
see, I don't remember ever watching it, but I already. She says magic mirror, doesn't she?
I believe so.
Okay.
I
See that
remember.
one I understand because I think what happens there is people that quote it would say mirror mirror on the wall for the sake of it just sounding better to the kids.
That could be, but I mean, again, that's a big one.
Because that's a big thing. Like when you teach little kids at church, they don't always teach them the verse word for word. They might change something that doesn't so much change the meaning just to make it easier for them to remember.
Yeah. All
So
right.
I feel like
So
that's probably the same thing that happened.
all right. So this is the last one, and it's from Star Wars. The Luke, I am your father scene. He's
Yep.
saying that he says, I am your father. Or hold on, honestly, and he said all he said really said is, I am your father. He says Luke in the movie. I specifically remember it. We can fight about this if you want to. I don't care. He said, Luke, I am your father.
I don't think he did on that one.
Oh, see,
I'm
we're about to fight in real life. All right, throw
see,
hands.
because I remember hearing people say that and then watching it and being like, "That's not what they said." But I don't
Oh,
remember. I don't remember any of the lines before that. That maybe they got them mixed up or they merged a couple lines. I really don't know.
Possibly. I personally remember that, but all right. So you've been on here before, so you know how I like to wrap the show up with the full disclosure. If somehow tomorrow another universe comes in from the multiverse and proves 100% fact that the multiverse is a real thing, however that would be to come about, what do you think the ramifications of that would be? Like, how
I
do you
think this.
think that would affect either your everyday life or just life in general?
I think there's only two possibilities, right? Just the cosmic scale of an event like that. It's only going to go two ways. Either they're going to end each other, just the physics of it. The two universes are going to end each other, or they're going to merge violently. Because here's what's going to happen: things that are occupying the same space and time but are separate, what happens to them? So if that universe is so close to us in similarity, then when it joins, say it joined right now,
No, what I
and
mean
that
is
other
like
me,
if somebody was to come from another universe and tell you
just a person or
just
something.
yeah, like not the two universes
Oh
colliding,
well,
but if another like say a group of people came and was like, this is the multiverse, this is what's happening,
and
this
they
is
could
real.
actually prove it while they said it.
Yes.
I think it depends on who they tell. Because if they told, this is going to sound pessimistic, I know, but I'm just being honest. If they told anybody with even the smallest amount of political power influence, they're not going to tell anybody below them. That's too good. That's something to hold on to. All the power they can get from having that kind of leverage. I don't think we'd find out for years, if ever.
Hmm. That's an interesting take on
But
that.
if they found a way to prove it to everybody at the same time, to make it public as they came in, I think people would hide. I
Hmm.
don't think it'd be so much chaos or anarchy. I think people would be hiding because somebody just popped up out of nowhere. So they could do that at any time
Yeah.
from any universe with
Hmm.
any level of technology or beliefs about violence and war. Who knows what's next? If they know the threat, people fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe most of the time fight if they think they need to. But if you don't know the threat or how to fight it, flight's the way to go, right? So I say
That's
I think people be bunkering down, buying up toilet paper and milk like they do every time there's a storm. I think we'd be running because we won't know how to handle whatever happens next, or if anything is going to happen next.
uh, I don't know. Me personally, I don't think it'd be that. I don't think people would care. Like, I mean, obviously people would care, and people would try to figure out a way to manipulate the system to work in their favor in that sense. But I don't think it would. I don't think even if they was able to 100% prove it, I don't think people would believe it.
I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. Like if I'm like Elon Musk or somebody, I'm gonna be sending people to go figure it out.
Oh
But I'm gonna
yeah,
be doing it.
hundred
But I'm
percent.
gonna be doing. But I'm gonna be doing it from a bunker, for real. Like
I
I'm
mean,
like
I
you.
just
You go figure this out and let me know what I can do about it.
the way I see it, I don't think I don't think they would. I don't think it'd have that much of an impact on people
Oh
personally.
man.
Like I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" But I also think that at the same time, what you can't do nothing about it.
I think people would react worse to that than they would to like aliens, for real. Because there's so much more unknown there, especially if they came in and they were like, hey, there's not just one more universe, there's
There's
thousands of
millions.
them or more. Like that's too much unknown for most minds to handle rationally.
Who knows? Maybe
First thing you do,
that'd be a
and
thing to
and
bring us
they,
together as a people.
hey, they might get past it quickly. I don't know, but I think that the immediate reaction from most people would be like, we don't know what to do with this, and because we don't know, we're gonna hide from it.
Hmm. Well, guys, that's going to end today's episode. Thank you for anybody who tunes in, and y'all are amazing. Thank you for so much support on episode one. Episode oh, I just had a brain fart. New episode of Riddles Around the World will come out every Monday, so be on the lookout for that. Monday morning, 7 a.m. Central Time is when episode two will premiere. So you will see us back then. I myself am a Twitch streamer. If you ever want to check out the least or less serious side of me, more joking and playful side, You can check me out at the Riddler 1370 on there. I'll have the link to that down in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, topics of any source that you want to hear us talk about or elaborate more, throw them in the comments below. We'll add it to the list and we'll get to it eventually, or who knows, if it's a good enough topic, we'll skip it. But like, share the video, sub to the YouTube channel, and with that, we out.